Our text this morning, one verse from Proverbs 13, dishonest money dwindles away, but he who gathers money little by little makes it grow. We've been talking about if only I could really forgive people, if only I could stop worrying, if only I could control my thoughts or my tongue. Well, today I want to talk about if only I could get my finance straight. And this is an area of interesting diversity in a congregation like this. I know some of you well enough to know that everything I say this morning is stuff that you figured out as you followed God's way for the last 30 years or 40 years, and you're going to say there's nothing new here. Well, hang in there with me. We'll get through this. For some of you, this is an area of current struggle. It's interesting that Orange County is one of the more affluent areas in the country, and yet a while back they did a survey and they asked people, what's the thing you need most in this life? What would make life better? And more than any other, the answer was just a little bit more money. In fact, they did a survey a while back of people who asked how much more money would you have enough, and it was interesting. Whatever they were making, it was 10% more. If they made $50,000 a year, they said $55,000. If they made $100,000 a year, they said $110,000. If they made $1 million a year, they said $1.1 million. 10% more, and I would have enough. But the reality is that so much of our issue with finance has nothing to do with how much we have. It's how we deal with what we have. And before I begin, I just want to highlight a couple of things. As we talk about money, we have to remember that the foundational understanding is that everything in this world is God's to begin with. Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord and everything in it. We don't own our 401ks. We don't own our cars. Well, in a sense we do, but ultimately everything that we have is God's gift to us to begin with, and we are called to use it well and in ways that honor our place in His kingdom and as His people. Because how we deal with money is a hard issue at the end of the day. It has nothing to do with just the mechanics of handling money. It's how do we relate to money and how do we relate to God? You know the text, most of you, Jesus said this. He said, it is impossible to serve two masters. You'll hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other, because you cannot serve both God and money. And this is a balance, because I'm going to talk a little bit about money, and some of it is going to be pretty practical this morning. But the reality is, if we obsess about money, and that's all we think about and all we talk about and all we strive for, we have gotten our balance way wrong, because that means God has been displaced by our possessions. And it is okay to talk about money in church. Some people wish preachers would never talk about money because they think all they want is more of what we got, and that's not the case at all. I would just note that there are over 2,000 verses in the Bible that do deal with money and possessions, and that Jesus had 39 parables, and of the 39, 11 of them, over a third of them, dealt with money and possessions. So if Jesus can talk about money, I guess we can too. Now, problems we get, if we handle our money poorly, if we never have it, if it's always gone, people just get divorced over money, people argue about money, people get depressed about money, people just, often because money is the obsession. But when we can get our finance under control, the quality of our life goes up, our peace goes up, and our ability to do good for others goes up. And so I have 5 quick points this morning, and then we will go to the table together. Number 1, decide today to settle in for the long haul financially. Week after week I've talked about how none of these changes, if we need changes in these areas, come easily. We don't just say, well, I'm not going to worry anymore, and boom, it's done, or I'm going to control my tongue, and suddenly we never have a bad word come out of our mouth. It's a constant struggle that we have to grow in day by day. The same is true here. You know, the text says, he who gathers little by little makes money grow. And so learning about money and dealing with money is going to be a lifelong process. Some of us in the room right now might need to get family budgeting for dummies as the baseline where we're starting, because we really do a really bad job with how we organize and manage our possessions and the gifts that God has given us. Some of us may need a master's level class in investing or something like that. We're all over the room in what we know about handling the finance that God provides. Some of us need to learn more about generosity. Settling in for the long haul simply means that we understand that we're going to deal with this for the rest of our lives. If we're in our teens or 20s, we're going to have to lay some good foundations. If we're in our 70s or 80s, we need to continue to grow. It's not something we can take for just a week or two. We can focus on it and then let it go. Organizing, getting money in its right place is a lifelong pursuit. Number 2, pay attention to what you do with your money. Now, this is really basic, and some of you are going to say, Bill, really? But some people don't get it. If you don't know where your money's going, you don't know how to organize and deal with it. How many of us have had the experience, I know I have, where you say, I just broke a $20 bill yesterday, it's gone, and I don't remember what I spent it on. And I see a couple of people going, yeah, it happens. It just kind of goes. And so I would encourage, if you have not done this in the past, spend a week or a month really tracking what you are spending and where you're spending it. And you can really be surprised sometimes. Some people have no thought. It's just part of their day. Every day on the way to work, they pull into Dunkin'. And I know they do because when I drive by Dunkin', they got a line that goes out into the street. I mean, just every day. Even if you get a plain cup of black coffee. When I first moved here 30 years ago, I went to Dunkin' and asked for a cup of regular coffee, and they put sugar and cream in it. I didn't know, but if you get plain black coffee, it's $4 a cup. If you do that 5 days a week, that's $1,000 a year. It goes in a hurry. If you get something fancy like a latte or cappuccino with 3 syrups or whatever, that can up to $2,000 a year. Sandy had a co-worker when she was in Michigan, and this is 20 years ago. And she complained, she said, I never have money. This was a CNA who made about $20,000 a year. Twice a day, 5 days a week, she went to the soda machine, paid $1.25 to get a Coke. $2.50 a day, $12.50 a week, $7.50 a year. It was 5% of her income. Of course she never had money. If I'm going to blow $1,000, I would much rather take the family to the Worcester Red Sox for a few games. Because for $1,000, you can have a few nights out at the Worcester Red Sox, or for $1,000, maybe one night out at the Boston Red Sox. I don't know how expensive that is now, but if I'm going to blow money like that, I'd rather do something like that, or maybe get a new computer. Sandy said, no, don't get a new computer, you do too much. Anyway, there are ways to use your money that we can enjoy that don't just let it fly out the door. Proverbs 27 says, be sure you know the condition of your flocks and give careful attention to your herds, for the riches do not endure forever. He's saying, pay attention to what you have. Know what you have. Inventory it. Use it well. Keep good financial records. That's number 2. Number 3, save. And if you aren't saving now, begin saving today. I read about a man who came up with an interesting method of beginning to save. Every day he would go online. Most of us do online banking now, I think, not all, but if you do, every day he would go online, he would open his account, and he would look at his balance, and he would transfer $1 plus whatever pennies were there in his balance. So if he had $287.97, he'd take $1.97 and transfer it from checking into savings. And suddenly he was saving about $50 a month, more than he'd ever done before. But it's even easier than that. Just about 3 weeks ago, I got a solicitation from Bank of America, my bank, saying, enroll in Save the Change. If you use a debit card, every time you made a debit purchase, it would take whatever pennies rounded up to the next dollar. So if it was and this was just automatic. It would transfer from your checking account to your savings account. If you spent $20.97, it would transfer 3 cents to savings. If you sent $20.10, it would send 90 cents to savings. Every purchase, you were throwing money into savings. It was easy to do. Proverbs says the wise person saves for the future, but the foolish person spends what they get. Or those who gather money little by little make it grow. Saving is a habit, and if you don't have it, start it. Number 4, make every effort to get out of debt. That getting out of debt isn't easy, but it is possible. Back in 1975, I had gone deeper into debt every year from the time I was about 17 until 75, it would have been 23. Every year, my net worth was more underwater. And in 1975, and it's a long story, I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, it involved beginning to tithe and some other things, but I decided I needed to get my financial house in order, and one of the commitments was to never go deeper into debt than I currently was. And so I would never charge anything if I didn't have enough money to pay it at the end of the month. I would not get myself deeper in debt. And that was when I was 23. By the time I was 26, I was out of debt, and it has been a wonderful and amazing feeling. Just make the commitment. Credit cards, by the way, if you don't handle money well, are a curse. Any of you who watch Dave Ramsey or know anything about Dave Ramsey said you should never ever use credit cards, even if you think you're getting points and rewards. I don't go that far because I actually have a rewards credit card. But if you have a problem with debt, if you got a problem with credit, did you know that Americans today have over $1 trillion in credit card debt? Not mortgage debt, not car debt, $1 trillion in credit card debt at an average of what, 18, 23, 26% interest? I mean, that's just death. Remember the MasterCard commercials? These are a few years ago, so the little ones won't remember this, but they were catchy. Yeah. Flight to Paris, $1,800. Dinner at a French cafe, $89, and so forth. And then to spend it with your love, priceless. But they never added at the end, and paying that debt off over the next 8 months at 26.7%, nowhere near worth it. Paul said, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. And that's not talking specifically about money, and I recognize that, but the principle is still there. And this one is talking about money. Proverbs 22, the borrower is the slave to the lender. Eliminating all debt will take most people years to accomplish. But if you start today, you can get there. And as long as you owe money, even if it is that mortgage, which is good debt, the reality is that the biblical message that the debtor is the slave to the lender always remains. It is good to pay down your debt. And finally, number 5, give joyfully and generously. Some people have a tendency to give only when it's easy to give. But when money starts to get a little tight, one of the first things to get cut is going to be their charitable giving, whether it's to the church or the Red Cross or wherever it might be. But that's a bad habit to get into because, first, it shows a lack of gratitude to God for all that He does and has given us. We have our daily bread. Even the tightest among us, and I know that there are some people in this room who don't have a lot of money, but even the tightest among us are not going to be hungry today. Even the ones of us who have the least are not going to be sleeping outside tonight. God provides daily bread, and for some of us, it is so much more than daily bread. And if our habit is, unless we really have a whole lot extra, so then we'll give a little bit away to God or to somebody else, that's showing a real lack of trust in God and His ability to continue to provide in the future. In Proverbs 3, we read, "Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine." Same way that practicing the discipline of saving will help us to get our spending priorities straight, being consistent with our giving will help us become consistent in other areas of our finance as well. And I will tell you just a touch of the service, the story about when I made that commitment in 1975. I had applied in 1974 to get a classical grant to help pay my pre-seminary education. And I put down that I was going to give $2 a week or $100 a year to the church, and I was going to spend $750 a year, or about $15 a week on dating, because that's what it cost, and I wanted a wife. And they turned me down because they weren't going to finance my Playboy lifestyle. And so in 1975, I said, I want to apply again. And I asked my pastor, is it okay if I apply again? He said, yeah, but if you put in the same budget, you're going to get the same answer. And he happened to be on the committee that made the decision. And so I kept the $750. I'll admit, I kept the $750 for dating because I still wanted a wife, and by God's blessing, in 1976, I got one. But I also committed to $10 a week or $5,000 a year on my $4,500 annual income, which was better than a 10% tithe that would be given to the church. And it was amazing that when I made the commitment to get my life straight in this area, for one thing, I started spending a whole lot less money on things I shouldn't have, like beer. I don't know how many of you remember in your 20s, but we did some stupid things back then. I got spending priorities straighter. God opened up some doors to money resources that I had not expected. And by His grace, that was the year that I started to build myself out of debt. I got this piece straight, and other pieces started to fall into place. It was kind of like, a jigsaw puzzle that if you don't put the pieces in order, they don't fit. The generous will themselves be blessed, it says in Proverbs 22, for they share their food with the poor. Malachi, a familiar text, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and test me in this, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have room enough for it. People will ask, how little can I get away with giving? Or more positively, how much must I give? The biblical answer in the New Testament is you don't have to give any particular amount. There is no tithe in the New Testament in the legalistic sense that there was in the Old Testament. We live by grace and not by law. The tithe is not a mandate, 10%, 5%, 15%. There is no magic number. Nowhere, any preacher who tells you there is, if you TV preachers will, some of them, just turn that channel. What the New Testament says is to give generously, to give cheerfully, to give willingly, to give with an open heart. 2 Corinthians said it is the willingness that makes the gift acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. And I will close on this with the giving, because this is one of the reasons people worry about preachers talking about money, and they think it's always about giving money to Fairlawn. It's all about making Fairlawn be able to pay its bills. Well, my practice since I was 25 is 10% to the church and then offerings above that. That is the Old Testament pattern, and it's been a good pattern for me, and it continues to be a healthy pattern. I think but it's not a law. Give as the Lord gives to you. Give generously. Some of it, yes, should come to Fairlawn. There are preachers to pay, electric bills to pay, roofs to be replaced occasionally, those kinds of things. But also bring backpack goodies for the kids that we got a drive going on right now. And not even just money. Wednesday, Sandy and I will go to Milford Hospital. They're going to get 2 pints of blood for us, Lord willing, and we will give that. I mean, there are so many ways. We give time. There's a bike rodeo, I think, coming up in September, right? I think I saw that. Can't do that without people giving their time. Give generously, give joyfully, and allow that joy then to spread into your life in other ways. That's about what I have to say. It's not all that complicated, and yet if you really get into the weeds, it can get very complicated. In a 20-minute message, I'm not going to cover everything from A to Z. Don't let money rule your life. But money can rule your life because you spend all your time obsessing with it. Money can rule your life because you don't think about and plan at all. And so get the balance right and serve God with your possessions in the same way that you serve God with your talents and with your times. Let's pray.